Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, May the 12th. Let's see, a Road to Worlds Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel proficiency test. Interesting idea. Does this mean we actually have to answer questions? Well, it says this link will open an external website, so it is just like a link to a website that's really gonna ask you questions. You can challenge the test as much as you want to pass. Aim for victory. Special Yu-Gi-Oh! Protector in-game item will be gifted to all Master Duel players with a global number of successful applicants. When the global number of successful applicants exceeds 50,000, so 50,000 people have to pass the test, and everybody gets this in-game global protector, which arguably means I don't personally need to do anything with it. And so let's see, you click C here for details, and then immediately it wants you to enter a different language. So looks to me like it's just a straight up test. Which of the following is correcting about each phase? When going first, you cannot enter the main phase 1 on your first turn. When going first, you cannot enter the battle phase. Let's see, which of the following is correct about the extra deck? Total number of cards must not exceed 60, totaling the main deck. The extra deck has exactly 15 cards. Extra deck can be anywhere between 0 and 15 cards. I think that's probably true, but it might actually be that the total might be just it can't exceed 60. That might actually make more sense. When Link summoning a monster in the main monster zone, you can only summon it to a monster zone that another Link's arrow is pointing to on the field. I think that's true. How many questions are here? Because this is boring, to say the least. Okay, there's 15 questions. That's not asking too much. We'll work our way back up now. Which is the following is not displayed in the Duel UI? The contents of your cards that are banished face down, the number of cards in your opponent's deck that is shown, contents of your opponent's cards that are banished face down, the number of cards in your opponent's hand. I assume it's your opponent's cards banished face down, which would make sense. Which is correct about the Duel UI. Cards that can be activated from your hand have a glowing blue edge. That's not true, it's yellow. Cards that in your opponent's field that can be activated by them have a glowing yellow edge. That's not true either. By setting display face down cards as transparent to on, the in-game settings you can see the cards set on the opponent's field. No. Cards that can be summoned from your hand will have a blue edge. Guess it's that one. See, which following game settings should be changed in advance if you have a card you want to activate after the activated effect of an opponent's card effects. Activation self-chain is probably the answer there. Which of the following correct description of the standard forbidden list as of May 2023? Oh yeah, how am I supposed to know specifically this one card? I would say he's probably limited, just guess. Which of the following mates can be set in edit profile? Rescue Rabbit. Does he change appearance during the duel? Laundry Dragon Maid, if that's a real mate's name, which I think it is, turns into a dragon. Which of the following is not displayed detailed information by holding the eye in the duel screen? Information about the cards set in your opponent's field, number of cards in opponent's deck. Number of remaining normal summons in your opponent can make. I guess that's probably it. Which of the following cannot be set in game setting? Display a button that switches the activation settings on the duel screen. Automatically choose the space to place a card. Display the number of duel spectators revealed in the opponent's hand in replay. I assume it's that one. Which of the following is the correct card? Can be pendulum summoned with both this card and this card. Which almost certainly this card is some number and this card is some number, and I assume clicking on this would probably take me away from it or not. I guess that would be, yeah, just a completely different page. And you can see how in this case, hopefully I was showing all of that, you just have like completely different websites and completely different pages, and how back-end wise the 25-30 years of Yu-Gi-Oh have led to a lot of spread amongst different websites supporting Yu-Gi-Oh instead of a card database being visually skinned to look like Master Duel and the modern theme a lot more. And I think I'm gonna go with this one. Just pick one. We'll just see if we can guess our way through a bunch of these. But yeah, all of this really should be in the Master Duel app, not in a separate website. Which of the following is correct about embodiment of Amphonia? Again, if I'd have to click on this just to see what this which one of these is true. I'm gonna go with this one. If anything, this really just shows how I've not learned much about Yu-Gi-Oh! And see, if I had known that it was going to be a bunch of very specific card questions, I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to pick a question here. This is taking too long. Like, this is getting into very specific questions all of a sudden, where it started off very generic as far as this. So we're just like, first three questions seem very generic, and then you get to the fourth question and it's like, here's a very specific card. Which of the following does not meet the activation condition if your opponent moves a card out of their graveyard as stated in Exorcist or Ellis? And see, I don't know why they would specifically focus on these cards unless these are hints as to these are the cards that will be played during the Master Duel Road to Worlds Master Duel. So let's just hit submit and say you failed. Almost certainly you failed. The odds are really far away from me. I got 6 out of 15 questions right. So what a waste of time. And honestly, I just don't think I would ever bother to investigate that further. Although it wouldn't be too hard to investigate that. And yeah. 15 questions, 4 different answers each. You could brute force this. But anyone that just mentions a card, if I actually looked at the cards, I could answer that. But obviously this just really points out I'm not proficient at Yu-Gi-Oh! That wasn't what I meant to click on. And I could have told you that at the very beginning, before even trying to take the test. But yeah, okay, that was a waste of time. That was a waste of 10 minutes. There's a mandatory update. Yu-Gi-Oh! On Steam in particular is going to have that. There's an announcement here, which I assume I won't do much better actually playing this online. I assume these are online events too, and not some real world event where you actually would have to go and compete. And then there's another survey recording gameplay, and this survey in comparison is much, still gonna say it's a little too short. There's 7 pages here though. This is all pretty much the same. Enjoying solo mode, mediocre. I find it a little difficult to find the menu. I think it's pretty bad. Then it's gonna say ranked mode. Do you find it easy to understand? It's neutral. Play to earn rewards. These are just the same old surveys, almost on a monthly basis. Not using it at the moment. Have no plans to use it. Deck editor. I think it's pretty bad. I think it's pretty bad. Overall satisfaction. But then the main things you want to implement are just add more cards, improve deck editing, noticeably not an option here to say give me more rewards. And that survey is definitely worth it for 10 legacy packs. Then there's issues of multiple cursors on display. Okay, well, that was that. Big old waste of time. We have login reward of another 200 gems today for qualifiers, and then daily quest today. We finally got a duel in solo mode, which would give me an excuse to duel in solo mode. We've got a duel live. We've got a login reward, which we can do all that later. Let's come over here and open a 10 pack of legacies cards, and then let's actually hop into this. Now, right off the bat, the biggest news, we'll skip over the accountability section for a second, is that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is out, or very close to being out. Reviews are out for it, and it's apparently the best game ever. Like, no exaggeration at all. Everybody that I've seen says, every review I've said is just like, it's perfect, it's great, and good for it. I don't really have any inherent decision or decide to play it anytime soon, but if it sells as well as it seems to be getting reviewed, then I'll undoubtedly have an opportunity to potentially play it. They are also mentioning, in several reviews have said, that there are more traditional open dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom compared to Breath of the Wild, and that may very well bring about older fans of older Zelda games like me, in that you might have a more traditional experience. Which the irony certainly there would be all the kids that love Breath of the Wild and think of that as what Zelda is, may actually hate Tears of the Kingdom because of the big dungeons and things. It'll either be they reject it or they slowly acclimate to that, because if Tears of the Kingdom sells at a higher price better than Breath of the Wild does, then Nintendo almost certainly would then shift back to making Zelda games the old way. So yeah, but I haven't played it. I don't plan on playing it anytime soon, so it's very hard as a video game critic to give any kind of consumer advice or anything like that when you're completely disconnected from the game. It does seem to me like its mass popularity is really going to just have most kids getting it just so they could talk to their friends about the game. So that's probably where that would all end up going. Let's see. Guess that's the card I want to pick. So then I would activate this and then drop this. And then special summon this. And then in this case you probably want to do something like this, where you summon this one first and then summon this one second. Then, wait, nope. Activate this effect. For the accountability section, I made a couple of more episodes of LEGO DC Supervillains. It's still very hard to maintain momentum there. I finally finished the point where you would have played all of the DLC levels that are just completely disconnected from the other levels. You can't even get to the first 5 DLC levels from the overworld in the open world section. You have to you have to literally select it from the menu, and then the first 5 levels of the DLC really doesn't make sense at all, because there's some DLC that's based off of the Shazam movie, there's some DLC based off the Aquaman movie, and then there's some DLC based off of Batman the Animated Series, which that in particular makes the least sense. And then there's also DLC based on Young Justice, not Teen Titans. And I don't think there was ever a Young Justice like direct-to-DVD movie or anything that would have made a lot of sense as far as why you would have guess I can't summon anything more. Alright, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, I don't think there was any reason why Young Justice would have needed a push or gotten DLC at all. Clearly having DLC around Teen Titans Go would have been a lot better advertisement, but I bet that TT Games and Warner Brothers for some reason didn't want to pay the extra license fee for Teen Titans Go, the Cartoon Network cartoons in particular around Teen Titans. Warner Brothers owns DC Comics, so they really wouldn't be paying a big license fee for the general Teen Titans or Young Justice. But Young Justice does seem just like a weird choice. But yeah, LEGO DC Supervillains with its DLC also highlights that there's nearly as many levels where you play as heroes as there are levels where you play as villains, and that the whole game is very much kind of this failed idea that is half finished. And that's something I hope that they don't repeat in this new generation of LEGO games, if they're even allowed to continue to make LEGO games. Yeah, I don't want them to continue down the path that they used to do, where they would try to sell half a game to people at a high markup price tag. I did a little bit of setup on my router, and it's two of the major things I need to do is I need to basically set up AdGuard Home again from scratch, even though I had already done a project. I don't think I have any backups of the files there, so I'm just gonna have to set all the settings up once again, which that's gonna suck. I could have sworn I made a backup somewhere, so I'll search my hard drive just to see if maybe somewhere I made a backup, because that would save me a lot of time. And then the WireGuard interface of the Asus Merlin firmware, for some reason, says you can only have 10 clients, which maybe that's realistic, frankly. Like, I've only really had 4 clients ever set up anyways, and at most only 2 of them were actively sending traffic, so maybe there is a thought that CPU-wise or internet bandwidth-wise, you really just can't have what would be the probably infinite or near infinite amount of WireGuard clients you could set up. But it seems like an arbitrary limiter for no good reason. And the WireGuard setup, and this is true for even DDWRT, doesn't let you configure the server with existing code or encryption keys. So that creates a situation where when moving from one router to the other, you don't have that opportunity to just move everything over and make it work, at least by default. I'm having to go into the command line effectively and manually change the non-volatile RAM settings so that it has the same keys as the old server, and then I need to test that to make sure that all works. But yeah, it's a shame that you can't just take what would be the wireguard.conf file and copy and paste it, which is what you really would expect to be able to do. Oh, this guy cannot be destroyed, can he? Alright, well, let's just try this one more time, I guess. But if I get the WireGuard set up, if I get the AdGuard Home set up on the router over the weekend, everything relatively should work. Let's try this one then. Alright, so how important would it be to activate, say, this? Nope, that ability is also finished. So we could potentially try this. and put it in the extras spot. We'll go ahead and activate this effect and put this here. So this guy doesn't stop. Anything that's up in this spot. Let's see, who do we want to get rid of? Probably that. Okay. Okay, well that set things back. So yeah, I'll be working on my router and hopefully getting it all working fairly well. I need to set up all the file sharing and things like that. But otherwise, there's a relatively minimal amount of transfer I want to do from my old router to my new router because I don't want to copy in settings that were causing potential bugs on my old router. And frankly, people smarter than me have, in Asus Merlin, figured out better ways to do most of what I was doing. It's usually a failure of creativity amongst programmers if I have to hard code something to do something unique. One of the things that theoretically is going to even work is that I may be able to get, even with two-factor authentication, I may get the router to actually email me if there's problems. And it has like an Alexa setting and an if this then that setting, which is kind of a cool idea, but it's also like insane as far as a function to say you could tell Alexa to turn on like a Wi-Fi guest mode and turn it off, which, okay, maybe there's some kind of explanation for that, but that's about the only one that makes sense. Interestingly, there is fail dual WAN options. There's a WAN aggregation option that won't work on my cable modem, but then there's also dual WAN, which is a separate thing where you could potentially plug in a 3G, 4G modem or an old cell phone into it and have that be your backup internet service provider, or even a load balancing internet service provider, which is an interesting thought, certainly. But some of that also falls apart when you realize the router only has 2 USB connections, and to run AdGuard Home, one of those USB connections is already being filled up by a USB stick, and then the other one's going to be filled up by a USB hard drive for file sharing and backups. I could potentially put all of the AdGuard Home stuff on the hard drive, but that seems a little risky. It probably is the smarter move, and particularly for the router I got, the RT-AX88U, one of the USB ports is right in the front under a hidden panel, so you're going to have this USB stick sticking out the front of it anyways, and so that's not going to look very pretty. But whatever. Last thing I need to care about is whether it looks good. I just want it to work. And let's see, did I do anything else as far as the accountability section? probably not much. I may be finally getting close to being done with this medium emergency, so I may have a lot more free time. That being said, I'm not likely to have as much free time as I once did ever, because there's just some new activities that I'm needed to be involved with that I can no longer ignore, I guess is the right way to say this. Other major news I want to mention: Unreal Engine version 5.2 has put out an announcement offering faster world creation and more creative power, as GameDeveloper.com is articles pointing out here. It's got a couple of new features, certainly, and just tweaks and improvements. As a 0.2 version, it's not likely offering that much of actual brand new features that have no connection to anything they would have announced with Unreal Engine 5.0, but it's just improvements and better adoptions of its announcements with the ray tracing lighting and the nanite systems and things like that, and better scripting and development. Really trying to take as much actual programming out of making video games. They made a claim that over half of all AAA games are being made on Unreal Engine 5, which is probably not that much of an exaggeration, honestly. It's very believable that half of all AAA games are on Unreal Engine 5, and then a significant amount of the ones that aren't on Unreal Engine 5 are being developed on either Unreal Engine 4 or proprietary in-house engines for some of the major publishers, because there really isn't that much of competition otherwise. If you're going to make an Unreal Engine 5 type AAA game and not use Unreal Engine, you really are going to struggle if you went with Unity, so you probably wouldn't do that. You'd either go with Counter-Strike Source or something like that, which is probably very less supported, or maybe Crysis Engine, CryEngine, but that too is almost certainly not a good decision. So, yeah. The only one thing I would say on top of that would be Unreal Engine 5 is designed to be fairly easy to adapt it to if you were making something in Unreal Engine 4. So there's very little reason, other than just monetary reasons and budget and timing reasons, to not have games jump from their Unreal Engine 4 original code to Unreal Engine 5, even if it really only offers better optimization. A very minimal better optimization at that. Let's see, if there's only a way I could double this, I could have won in that one attack. But yeah, there is definitely some concern still to be had, I think, around Unreal Engine and Unreal Engine 5, because almost every game that DF Retro talks about where it has transversal stutter or micro stuttering or improper frame pacing, all those things, or shader caching issues, shader stuttering, like all these issues that DF Retro is talking about, assuming all of them are real and that that DF Retro isn't identifying something there that actually isn't there, or they're misidentifying a symptom as being caused by something when it's actually being caused by something else. All of those complaints, though, are from Unreal Engine 4 games. And even the newest games, of which there's only been 2 or 3 that have moved to Unreal Engine 5, really have not been 100% bug-free from the stuttering and the other bugs that come around from different types of stuttering and shader caching. There may just be this disconnect between people programming Unreal Engine on very powerful computers or very specifically designed computers, very specific CPUs and GPUs, and the reality for a lot of gamers. There was also a hint, and I'm gonna see if I can just pull this up, that Sharp was making making LCD panels for a major like video game consoles, what they're hinting at, which implies that the next Switch or next console made by Nintendo, the Switch 2, which is probably not really going to be a Switch 2, would have a screen built into it, which means it's not just going to be a plug-in to a TV console, although that would be very weird, and B, that it would be an LCD screen, not a like Sony Sharp screen, which would be a crazy one to go with, or an organic LED, or an LED in general, or a or quantum dot LCDs, quantum dot LEDs, any kind of like fancy fancier technology. So that doesn't, I mean, the screen could easily be very sharp and very good, but it's probably going to be somewhat on a budget. And when you look at Wikipedia here, as far as flat panel display manufacturers, there's not as many as you would think. In particular, just LCDs, you have a lot of companies that you almost certainly would have never heard of, or like Epson's not one that you'd think is a major name behind it. LG Display, Sharp, Sony, and Samsung Display. Samsung Display being the major player here, making a significant amount of flat panel displays for other TV manufacturers and such. Those are the big names that I recognize. The fact that you even have like Toshiba and TCL separated out as making their own displays is questionable even in my mind. But Sharp would definitely be at the bottom of the list too. And there are some big names here like Pioneer and Panasonic, but I don't think I would really think of them as display manufacturers by much. Like, my main things would be Samsung Display is way far in the first place, then Sony is probably number 2, and then I would say probably LG Display is number 3, with Sharp being number 4, and then there's probably a far drop off. But that's specifically LCDs. You can see there's considerably fewer OLED manufacturers here, with Samsung Display not even being listed in that case, which puts Sony in... Nope, there's Samsung Display. I was wrong about that. It was just in a different position. Let's play a little bit more Yu-Gi-Oh! Here and win. Right, we just banished this. pick 4 cards very quickly. We need to do 1100, and then we'll just go ahead and chain a chain, but arguably I should have, if I knew this was going to be able to potentially counter a chain, I should have activated this first, then activated that ability. I can't activate this ability twice. So unless this wants to potentially stop me from doing that and lower its attack again. You know what I should do is I should just put this face down and then I'll win. So yeah, considerably fewer OLED displays, noticeably sharp still as an OLED. As far as micro LED technology, seems like Samsung and Sony still may have toes in these. In all fairness, a lot of these lists could be fairly old too. This is like April 2018, so it's very possible that this year Samsung and Sony aren't making micro LED, and nobody really is. As far as actual fabrication plants, though, you can see that there's not a huge list here, and arguably that's one of the biggest dangers, is that you have all the fabrication plants either in Japan or China or South Korea or Taiwan, or and that's it. It's all in Asia's, in an Asian country. There's not a single TV manufacturing plant inside of any other country or area. You'd think potentially you could have one somewhere in Africa, but it may be too hot in Africa. There's no stability in South America. It's too expensive to have one in the North Americas. Although it probably wouldn't be that expensive to have a fabrication plant of in, say, like Mexico, or a very cheap place in one of the cheaper states in the United States. But even a cheap state in the United States is going to be very expensive. And the technology to make panels, as small as they are now, very well may be locked into the Asian countries, and they don't want to lose their proprietary secrets. So that's why they're all in Asian countries. That being said, if China all of a sudden said we're not making TVs anymore, or LCD panels, that's a big problem. Noticeably, there aren't any manufacturing plants in India either. So, yeah. Assembling electronics when you can't get screens on them is going to make it almost impossible for nearly all devices. Noticeably also on this Wikipedia, they're not talking about e-ink or similar screens like that are more niche technologies. E-ink just announced a new, even better color range, full color e-paper display technology that they're going to start manufacturing and selling. Of course, the problem there is E-ink is the only company that owns the rights to this technology, and it's way too expensive for most devices to implement, which is a shame, because you would think that the cheap Kindles and things would look even better every year. Every time E-ink has a better full color e-paper type technology, but the Kindles have done basically nothing to improve in years. They're still black and white, and that's it. They still really only read books and maybe play some music. I am shocked that I lost here. So yeah, I would say maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill there, but it does to me seem like Sharp making a screen probably indicates that they are going for still a more budget experience. Here's that actual article from videogameschronicle.com. Sharp is making LCD displays for a new console as the Switch successor speculation mounts. Now, this could be genius maneuvering on the part of Sharp in that they're making perhaps a LCD screen for something like their ROG Ally, which was finally starting to ship, and they're putting out some reviews around that. That being said, I don't think people are super happy with the experience with the ROG Ally for its price. So yeah, it is possible Sharp is making LCD screens for some other company. It's not even insane to assume that maybe Sony or Microsoft are working on making a portable console, which, yeah, I could see particularly Microsoft saying, hey, this Steam Deck caught a lot of people's attention, better than most of our gimmicks and attempts have caught people's attention. Think about it. In the past 12 months, what have people been talking about around Microsoft? It's been Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, or Microsoft subsidiaries putting out a bad game like Redfall. And arguably, they're not even talking about Redfall being garbage here. It feels like it's been a week since the launch and people have already forgotten about it. So I don't even think it hurt it that much. I'm just going to summon this one since I think this is my first turn. And end the turn at that. But yeah, assuming that this is Nintendo, a LCD screen out of the gates immediately implies that there will be an OLED version at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if there is an OLED version very quickly after the initial launch of the LCD versions, or even day and date, where there's a $300 or $400 version of the console with an OLED, and then there's a cheaper version with the LCD version. Although I would not like to see that become the standard amongst portable consoles. And certainly, without maybe some more details on resolution, there's really no way whatsoever of knowing any kind of power or GPU or CPU requirements to run an LCD screen. If they told me, say, the LCD screen was doing 4K, that gives you some indication. If it has a native resolution of 4K graphics, or if they said that it had a native resolution of, say, 720p, that would give you some indication. But outside of that, it doesn't really mean much. And arguably, you do run into a situation with the Switch even, that if you are playing on this console, a really sharp 720p is not that different from a blurry 1040p, because you just don't need higher resolutions when you're talking a 7 or to 10 inch screen. Like, you can make the pixels smaller and smaller all you want, but at a certain point that's just gonna mean that you can't read things. One of the things I think is strange about the Switch is it definitely feels like a device that should work as an e-reader or a manga reader in particular. As a Japanese product, you would think that there would have been more of a desire to allow for that, but I just don't think the screen is good enough to really try for something like that. So maybe they could fix that in a newer device. It would be interesting if the screen folded, but honestly, there was just a Google I/O with a new Pixel folding screen, and they're selling that, I think, for like $1,400. So obviously the folding screen concept will eventually come down in price if it gets severely adopted, but it's really going to be a catch-22 where it's always going to be too expensive for most people, so the idea of a folding screen is just never going to be really adopted, I think. But that certainly could be helpful if that was the case, where you had a screen that could be a lot bigger than just a 7 to 10 inch 16:9 ratio screen, which is what you have to assume it's going to be. It would be interesting also if the new Switch had like a camera or microphone built into it, which I think most parents wouldn't like that. It's funny they didn't ever really push an accessory even to add a camera, like a USB-C camera at the bottom of it. But things have certainly changed since the old days of the Game Boy camera. At a certain level, it is very much pointless to talk about what the next Switch device is going to be that much, considering there just has not been any real news put out. I give Cyan a lot of extra press, admittedly, because they're the makers of Myst, and Myst is probably my third favorite game, even though it definitely is not a game I've gone back and played as much as, say, The Binding of Isaac, which I put way more time into that, which would probably be Binding of Isaac Rebirth, or some variation of that is probably my first favorite game. But they do have their game Firmament being Steam Deck verified, so yeah, yet another game being highlighted. In particular from for the Steam Deck. And that's the thing, is Steam, if you're buying games on Steam, which if you're a PC gamer you almost have to, you're going to see that Steam Deck push and that Steam Deck verified on the Steam pages. So even if Microsoft or Sony were to make a portable console, if they're just PCs playing games, they're not going to have the advantage. So if Microsoft or Sony did make a portable console, it would make a lot more sense for them to play downloaded versions of the proprietary Xbox discs and PlayStation discs or downloads, even though really they're all just PC programs anyways. There is potential there to have a closed ecosystem. YouTube TV also says that nearly half of YouTube's US viewership is now on TVs, helping drive an ad shift. Meanwhile, YouTube is also cracking down on ad blockers, which I have to assume the new CEO got word that there was a bunch of people using ad blockers and he said crack down on it, which maybe in retrospect means Susan Wojcicki deserves some praise for her restraint on not cracking down on ad blockers. Although you could also just say maybe she was a bit incompetent and that's why ad blockers weren't being cracked down. YouTube Advanced seemingly is never going to be fixed, so that ad blocker's out. The Chrome store in particular is going to be cracking down on ad blockers in general, as far as extensions, which really leaves you only with installing Firefox, because every other browser is basically based on Chromium, which is somewhat supported as a code base by Google. So, well, maybe the Chrome version, the Google-fied version of Chromium will block ad blockers a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if Chromium itself, as a base, more open source browser, gets tweaks and changes added to it to try to block ad blockers as much as possible. And there's definitely a large amount of people, myself maybe included, that would significantly reduce the amount of YouTube they watch or stop using YouTube altogether before they would sit through the hyper annoying, multiple repetitive ads that YouTube gives you. At a certain point, if YouTube could make an argument that by stopping people from using ad blockers, they can reduce the amount of ads they're showing to people in half, I could see getting on board with that idea. That being said, I feel like that concept is probably not true, and we will still get 2, 3, 4 ads experimented on people, and inherently they are just going to continuously push you until you break with annoying ads, and then slightly turn the dial down just a little bit below the average breaking point of people. So yeah. And yeah, it's awkward certainly as a YouTube content creator, but it's been fairly consistent, I think, amongst almost all content creators to say, hey, this is blocking of ads, the blocking of ad blockers, so that people have to, trying to force people to watch ads who have specifically gone through a lot of extra work to avoid ads is not worth it and really just shouldn't be done. It seems fairly consistent. Most people would prefer to just get views without ads instead of trying to get that small cut of ad revenue. Well, I think we can handle a 100 character Steam token. There, we gotta surrender. There is definitely an argument to keeping up momentum here and just trying to move your way up the ranks to get to platinum, and potentially, well, once we get to platinum, if we don't get to diamond from platinum, then we just need to end the month at platinum, at any point at platinum, really. Like, even if I was at platinum 1 at the end of the month, it still would take me down to diamond 5, I believe, is how this system works. Which is part of the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, is that you just takes an entire month potentially to try and make it. Let's go ahead and just activate this just to irritate this guy. Let's start going through the video game news fairly quickly. We probably should just stop playing too. We went a little long. Some of this may be old news as far as Video Games Chronicle. Bungie has won another Destiny 2 cheat seller lawsuit. This is getting boring, to say the least, in my opinion, to see just how much they are suing people for, and maybe they're winning judgments and amounts that is that much, but clearly they're not really getting that money. if anything, Bungie is creating itself as a company as having a lot of money owed to it on the books, almost to I guess you cook the books a little bit would be the best way to say it. If we saw Bungie has sued multiple people and they have millions of dollars in judgments coming to them, and then all of a sudden they get acquired and sell themselves to somebody else based significantly on the amount of money that they're saying is owed to them, that would be some weird financial accounting and maneuvering there. That being said, any company that acquires another company without having forensic accountants go through all the accounting and seeing that, oh yes, you have millions of dollars of judgments from this guy from Denmark, which I believe that was this lawsuit in particular, because this guy's in Denmark. And then the lawsuit that before with the Bowser guy was a Canadian. They are getting these lawsuits and these judgments in ridiculously large sums from individuals who are never going to have any kind of money like that. And there probably needs to be some kind of balancing factor. To stop these exorbitant fines happening to individuals. Well, let's see how this goes. Okay, summon this. Toss this. And then let's go ahead and summon this. I guess for the accountability section, I also want to mention that I've watched season 2 of Only Murderers in the Building, and I don't think it was as good as the first season, but it was fine. That's pretty much all I think there is to say there. And I've been watching this Netflix Junji Ito horror animated series, and boy, do those stories just end. Like, I don't know if they are intentionally ending very abruptly to say, hey, yeah, people just die and you don't get explanations, or horrible things happen and you don't get explanations. Certainly, it feels very subtle even for a Japanese horror manga animator. And I don't know if this is perhaps because they've taken his mangas and just converted them, it seems like, directly to anime cartoons. Maybe that's why it's so abrupt, or if maybe there is a bit more of an ending and a wrap up in the manga and they're leaving that for the people to read. But yeah, as an anime and as someone who hasn't read any of the Junji Ito manga, it just feels very abrupt. Very often there's two stories being told in one episode, so it will very quickly just fade to black and then fade in on next scene, and you're watching a completely different episode, and it's hard to even recognize that. There's no even like interstitial little audio or screen. There might be like just a black screen that says the title of the story. And I don't find anything particularly scary, so the Junji Ito is weird stuff, certainly, but it's not getting at me at any kind of raw, natural feeling. As far as just, yeah, I guess maybe I just don't relate to humanity as much as most people do, so I don't find any of it really that scary. Perhaps that is more of a Western horror fandom that's in me, also, in that I want my horror events to be explained and understandable, whereas a lot of these events are just like, okay, this horrific thing happens and there's really no reason why it happened, and there's no solution and there's like no way to beat it, and that's fine, but I kind of just want it to be longer. It could be all the same. It just feels like if they had expanded on the idea. And I guess that's not what Junji Ito does. It feels like his manga stories are probably 2 or 3 pages of some idea that he just had, and it is just a general idea. If you told me he was taking magic mushrooms or a smoking pot, and that's where all of these ideas were coming from, and that they were just high thoughts, I would totally believe that. But I also would believe that maybe he's not doing any drugs since he's Japanese, and he is just was on an incredibly tight deadline when writing a story, so he would just create one little thing and then move on. And arguably, you're probably hurting his animation and his storytelling and his pacing quite a bit by turning it into an animated series, but that's the only way you're going to get more people to watch it. That being said, it is also a horror series, so you're not going to get a bunch of people to watch it in the first place. Also, speaking as far as watching things, since I pulled out a bunch of my Blu-rays, which I haven't watched any of those in probably 10 years, I started to look on Amazon as far as just like, show me everything you've got from the Criterion Collection, which arguably I think Amazon doesn't have everything from the Criterion Collection. But maybe there's just a lot of out of print things. And then I was like, show me all complete collections of TV shows, of which, yeah, there was basically nothing there that interested me. A lot of things have not been even turned into Blu-rays of the more obscure TV shows, let alone 4K UHD Blu-rays. So, and then movies wise, there's not a great argument to own a movie on a Blu-ray or 4K UHD Blu-ray unless it is just a really great movie that has great visuals, or one that you're going to watch over and over again. So, you know, even I feel that I begrudgingly have to say disc-based entertainment is either dead now or on its deathbed, just because the selection and the creation of content has been really bad. That being said, like the Get Smart DVDs, in particular, if you want to see Get Smart, you're going to really struggle to watch the original Get Smart anywhere. Maybe it's somewhere on Paramount Plus streaming, if you have Paramount Plus streaming, but that's a really failing streaming service. So you run into that problem of that still being one of those niche shows that's relevant. Of course, most people these days probably don't even know what Get Smart is, or they think of the Steve Carell reboot from several years ago. They don't think of the Dawn Addams show from like the 70s, or the Andy Dick reboot show, which that too is on DVD, although why you'd want to watch that, or Get Smart again, or Get Smart versus The Nude Bomb, which were 2 movies that are not included in the DVDs. If you want to watch all of Twilight Zone, you can get all of Twilight Zone on Blu-ray. And they do have a newer version of that than the versions I have, which is probably just a repackaging of the same discs. But there really isn't too many shows out there. Particularly if you're not a sci-fi type fan. Like, I can't imagine there's too many people that need to own Friends on DVD, or I don't know what else, 90210, some other kind of show like that. It's a little funny that the soap operas don't sell discs. Like, they probably don't even have copies of some of the Days of Our Lives type shows, but that would make a lot of sense if they tried to bring those to DVD. But I don't know if that actually exists. Anyways, that has nothing to do with video games. This will be the last game we play. We've done pretty well today. But yeah, there's just not a lot of reasons to own discs, except for the one major reason, which is if you have kids and you're driving around a lot, it still makes a lot of sense to have at least DVDs of Disney movies and things like that. And that's probably where a Disney Plus subscription would have worked a lot better, is if by having Disney Plus you've got some kind of Disney points that lets you either rent or buy actual Disney DVDs. And then Disney themselves could continue to sell DVDs of their cartoons and their animated shows. It probably wouldn't be anything to get a $5 coupon off of buying a Disney DVD direct from Disney shipped to your house. And I could see Disney taking over the entire, like, vertical chain there as being the actual people making the physical Blu-ray DVDs, all the way down to producing the movies and shipping them. Well, definitely no disc-based media is dead when there's no longer DVD players or Blu-ray players sold at any amount in Walmarts. Like, that entire electronics section at a Walmart will eventually disappear, and it will just be TVs being sold. TVs and surround systems on a thin wall on the back. They've already started to replace a lot of the electronic sections with cell phone kiosks and trying to sell cell phones. Okay. So if this guy can stop me in any way from getting Zeus, I've lost. If I can get Zeus here, I think we can potentially win. I guess if he destroys this card for some stupid reason. Wow. What a dumb move. Okay. So we need ammunition. So when I special summon something, can that trigger something? Seemingly not. And so then the only big question would be, do we want to destroy anything with that character? And I I think the answer is probably no. Direct attack for 800. Although, at a certain point, it also would make a lot of sense for Disney to straight up just license a Disney Plus preloaded hard drive. In cars. Just eliminate the need to put DVD players or Blu-ray players in the cars in the first place. And mostly you're talking SUVs. Like a little sedan's probably not going to have a DVD player in it anyways. For like a rear seat entertainment system. So yeah. Disney could eliminate the physical disc concept completely from its concept and just have preloaded hard drives with just movies with special DRM to prevent them from getting cracked and ripped. Although in all fairness, those Disney movies have long since been cracked and ripped and put on the internet anyways, so. But yeah, and it really wouldn't take that much space. You're probably talking 512 gigabytes to a terabyte or two of a hard drive just being put inside a car, which cars almost certainly have some kind of NVMe cheap or actual hard drive things built into them anyways. Yeah. And at a certain point, a preloaded hard drive is just really a convenience, because you could have a Disney Plus app on most car seats entertainments and then tell them to just download the videos to stream via a cell phone connection. That would be fairly wasteful, though. Here we go. This will determine whether we win or not. If this can activate before this and destroy everything. There we go, we've won. Unless there's just some other thing he can do. He's going to special summon one fusion monster from the extra deck. He's only got one more card he could even play. Video game news though. FIFA 23 will join EA Play and Xbox Game Pass next week. Modern Warfare 2 Season 3 Reloaded trailer shows off new multiplayer map. Private Division signs a new action-adventure IP from Game Freak, the Pokemon studio. Alright, let's now activate this. If something weird happens and this doesn't destroy this guy, I guess I've lost at that point. He's kind of going in circles. He summoned something that let him draw cards when it was destroyed. Now I don't have enough cards to activate Zeus again. So if he can do something here. I think most of these articles are things we already talked about. EA says FIFA 23 topped FIFA 22's lifetime sales in 6 months. There we go. So he surrendered. So we will end on a victory today. Seems like they might be giving us more legacy packs nowadays, which I guess is nice, but they really should get away from the idea of giving us legacy packs in favor of giving us either cards or something else of interest. Just having a little variety would be better. 2 more victories to get to gold tier 2. And then 3 more victories in a row to get to gold tier 1. Today is the 12th, so we're about halfway through the month. So if we could get to platinum 5, that would be great. But we'd almost have to skip the world tournament completely and play fairly consistently to get all the way to platinum 1 or diamond 5, which ideally that's what we'd want to have happen here, is that we would make it to diamond 5 and then we would stay within platinum 5 every month and get back to diamond 5. I don't particularly care to try to struggle all the way to diamond 1, but it'd be nice if we got to diamond 1 at some point. So really it's a situation where either you skip an event or you play twice as much Yu-Gi-Oh as what I would like to play. We don't really have an event even being teased as coming soon, so there might be time for that. And then so we've gotten all the daily missions except for Fusion, Link Summon, and Pendulum Summon, which that's one that I constantly am going to have to focus on. And we've got the daily login. And playing in solo mode, obviously we didn't accomplish either. Yeah. 3 more login days needed to get all of this road to the world's champions, which would imply to me that there's going to be a thing that happens fairly quickly. Now obviously at 1080p is a lot more room for more one-time rewards and a lot of room here for more discovery rewards, which is getting our gems up somewhat nicely. That being said, we still don't want to buy more packs at the moment, and it still will be a little while until we get to level 100 here, but we've got plenty of time on that also. So everything seems like it is working fairly well. We've purchased everything. We purchased the structure deck. The only thing that might make sense would be to come and look at this. Yeah. I'd like to get to 6,000 gems before I spend 3,000 gems opening this pack. And I think we've got a decent amount of time to work on that, 61 days. So yeah, it really is just focusing on moving up ranked at the moment, which good. That's something that I'd love to just focus on. So yeah, I think a lot of these articles are old articles. It almost seems like I somehow wrote the code to open a page 2, whatever page 2 was, of the stories from Video Games Chronicles, if there are enough articles that are new to show up on page 2, if that makes any sense. Like when it clicks next and goes to page equals number 2, it seems to just open everything there instead of doing the same code that it would have done if there had only been 1 or 2 new news articles. I suppose also it doesn't matter for me to complain about my current Wi-Fi messing up like crazy. It's been a nightmare since, but I'm totally abandoning it, so no reason to complain about it. EA overjoyed with Star Wars Jedi performance. Hollow Knight's Silk Song's been delayed. Capcom record number of game sales. EA's CEO is indifferent about the Microsoft Activision deal. Fans were lining up for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This Australian commercial which I really didn't get. Let's see. So this might be the first new story. Zelda's OLED boosted UK Switch sales in April, with the PlayStation 5 still being the top 5 selling. So there was a Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Special Edition OLED. I guess it's important to also point out here that if Sharp is making an LCD, then they would be jumping from the organic LEDs. LCD technology is kind of the oldest technology. It seems very weird if they were making that. I don't know if the non-version of the original version of the Switch was an LCD, but I would assume that it would be an LED too. Zelda's Tears of the Kingdom developers say the game has traditional dungeons. One of the things that was interesting about that is I was watching DF Retro's coverage, and they were trying to show like the slight improvements that have been made, which it's kind of amazing that there are any improvements between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom by having Zelda walk in the same areas. And there seemingly is better lighting and better shadows, just slight improvements here and there on that, less pop-in, maybe a little bit more even grass. I'm not sure if I saw that one or not, but noticeably at the end of them trying to display all the visual differences that have been tweaked and improved, even though it is worth mentioning that one of the main gameplay mechanics just causes the frame rates to tank like crazy in the game. So, and even when you are just twisting the camera, the dynamic resolution drops. So it'll drop down to like 720p when you're pivoting your camera and looking to the left and right, and then it will very quickly jump back up to like a 1080p when you're standing still, which that's probably going to be noticeable to some people. But the biggest thing that I noticed in DF Retro's thing is that while he was walking around in a relatively peaceful Hyrule in Tears of the Kingdom, he walks down a path and then immediately gets attacked by the robot creatures in the Breath of the Wild comparison video. So, and I think that is just part of the major problem in general with Breath of the Wild, is that it is a fairly beautiful open world area that you often are not allowed to just look around and take a breath, because you're getting attacked by the robot creatures way too often in the open world to make up for the fact that there aren't dungeons and that there aren't enough bosses overall. In a lot of ways, Breath of the Wild is taking some of the worst concepts of an average JRPG and just adding fluff by having roaming super powerful bosses. And yeah, maybe Tears of the Kingdom fixes that. It would be very strange, but not super surprising, if kids actually don't like Tears of the Kingdom. Let's see. EU regulators are going to reportedly clear Microsoft Activision's acquisition next week. Which, okay. I wish there was somebody, though, that would explain how this all really works. I guess at a certain point, some countries may just have laws that say, if you want to do business in our country, you have to be approved by our rules and regulations. And when you're talking big European Union collection of countries, not doing business in the EU is probably not really an option. We had already talked about this, Nintendo hinting that the next console could be announced closer to the launch than the Switch was. The assumption is that it's not going to be before Christmas this year, but will be potentially announced a few months after Christmas this year in 2024. May's PlayStation Plus game catalog and classic titles have been announced. I think we probably covered those. Here's a long list on Video Games Chronicle if you want to check it out. Latest Mortal Kombat hints at a potential reboot. Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 Season 3 Reloaded patch notes were released. It looks like Dragon Age Dreadwolf won't be released before April of 2024, according to Video Games Chronicles. Which I believe this is a game that's been teased a little bit, but really doesn't, I think, have much solid information about it yet. Xbox's May system update launches this week. If you want to read about that, see what does it actually change. Oh, I suppose it is in general somewhat relevant to say it seems like Elon Musk has gotten bored with Twitter or been secretly sidelined by the other investors into Twitter and is no longer going to be the CEO. But I think his involvement still could be very much just about the same. And inherently, his interaction and involvement in Twitter is going to leave a fairly long-lasting scar on the company and its reputation. So, yeah, I believe I used the phrase when it was first announced that he might be the cleansing fire to get rid of a bunch of kind of bad programmers, particularly at Twitter. When you look at just the final product they reveal, there are definitely some a lack of production and improvement on Twitter over the years. So the thought is he might be the cleansing fire. The question is this new person that they've named, this female CEO, which is all I've seen YouTubers describe her as, without giving her an actual name, like, will she be the healing rain that brings in new talent, better talent, and has a real leadership ability and a real concept as to where to take Twitter, if you're going to take it anywhere? And I guess inherently, can Twitter be forgiven and be rebooted and become something better? And we'll just have to wait and see. And we'll have to see if Elon Musk really is bored with Twitter and is just not going to be using it or focused on it. Like, he does seem like he's fairly consistently gets bored with projects and then moves on to the next big thing, and then his leftover projects get left to flounder or work in silence without being harassed by him. But they don't seem to be very successful either when you start to talk about like Tesla as cars or the SpaceX projects, those, or the Boring Company. None of those are major successes. At some point I thought Tesla was supposed to be making its own solar panels and making a factory for that, and I don't think that ever happened. Maybe I'm making that up. Anyways, that's not video game related though, and I'm just rambling. Boy, no, having somebody as a second seat in this podcast, if you want to call this a podcast, would probably be very helpful to just keep me on topic. Yeah. Diablo 4's post-launch season, Battle Pass, and shop have been explained in detail. It sounds like nobody's super upset with the monetization, but they are somewhat, I think, upset with the monetization. Pretty much any monetization, though, they would have been upset with. Mortal Kombat 1 details have seemingly leaked ahead of an imminent reveal. The game is reportedly coming to the PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and Nintendo Switch. Is this a leaked image, or is this just an image from something else. Standard version is going to be $70. A premium version for $109, and a collector's version for $250. Ridiculous prices. Like, at a certain point, these ridiculous prices are going to kill the game industry. Yeah, I assume this is probably not a leaked image. And there is definitely a big question as to what would Mortal Kombat 1 be. Because it really can't be Mortal Kombat 1 as a reboot. You can reboot the timeline, sure, but you've got to retroactively add a lot more characters than the 6 or 8 characters that were available in Mortal Kombat 1. Otherwise, you've got to flesh out those 6 or 8 characters as being a lot more than what they were in the first game. And you've got to add a heck of a lot more features than just the tournament style ladder ranking fights in the game. So you've got to do a lot of redconning, frankly, for it to make any sense at all. You basically have to go through the 12 previous Mortal Kombat games and say, of the young people who are kids of old people, can we bring in the old people in the Mortal Kombat 1? And of the old people who were potentially around and alive during the time of Mortal Kombat 1, can we put them in Mortal Kombat 1? So you're probably going from 6 or 8 starting characters to 36 to 50 starting characters to begin with. It's probably going to be a very big number. Then you've got to add a whole bunch of features and a whole bunch of story and a whole bunch of backstory. And you can't change anything too much. So it's got to be Goro, and it's got to be Shang-Tzu, or whatever the guy above Goro was. I forget his name. And it's got to have way more of a move set than what Mortal Kombat 1. So it's going to really be Mortal Kombat 1 in name only. We already talked about Sharp making an LCD displays for a new console as the Switch successor speculation mounts. Disney's CEO says the Mario movie's success gives us reason to be optimistic about the business. Arguably, that's like the only thing I guess Bob Iger, as the CEO once again of Disney, could say. Inherently, though, under Iger's leadership, decisions have been made either under him or greenlight by him to turn pretty much all the Disney movies into live action movies, and it has failed miserably. Most recently, the Wendy and Peter Pan movie, which pretty much isn't even really a remake of Peter Pan, the animated show. The problem with Disney in particular is they fired all their animators long time ago, and there's not a generation of new animators that can even animate the way the hand-drawn animation of old Disney movies were made. So they pivoted to trying to make live action things. They also put a lot of people in charge to make some very controversial changes to classic Disney movies that really should not have been changed at all. Most recently, the Ariel being done by an African American or dark-skinned actress. People riling against that, whether that's legitimate or not. People were talking about that way more than anything else. So if I was Bob Iger, once again in charge, I'd say, hey, we see the Mario movie here. This is 3D CGI. There are animators nowadays that know how to do 3D CGI. So let's give up on the live action stuff. and make 3D CGI remakes of all of our Disney movies. Very possibly, you don't even have to change the audio. It could be the exact same audio, it's just a different art style, and put it back in theaters. It's ridiculous that the original movies aren't getting remastered and put back in theaters in general. A Sleeping Beauty remastered in 4K UHD would be back in theaters, would make a lot of sense and not be that cheap, that expensive. AI art, Disney probably has the research capability, since they have special research capability. They have a big R&D division. They probably could make an AI art generator that was programmed only on every single like master frame of animated movies to generate new characters, new stories, new art, and they would only be using their own copyrighted material, so you don't have any real problem there to say, hey, to secretly they could just have an AI art generator make a new Disney movie, or redo the visuals of an old Disney movie and put it out there. Or you could see Disney also doing what Mario movie did, is have a lot of stunt casting voice actors for a 3D CGI movie too. But inherently right now Disney is not doing any of that, and they're just doing live action remakes of their cartoon movies, which is not working for them. And they're losing ground to Sonic movies and Mario movies by far. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle has the Tears of the Kingdom review roundup, one of the best Zelda games ever made. I mean, it definitely is inspiring me to potentially play Tears of the Kingdom. It may be a fact that you just don't actually, I might be able to just skip the Breath of the Wild, finishing Breath of the Wild, in favor of just playing Tears of the Kingdom. And I mean, playing halfway through Breath of the Wild, I know I'm gonna fight Ganon, so I'll beat Ganon, Ganondorf, whatever, Calamity Ganon, whatever version, and then every piece will be relatively returned to Hyrule, and then from those general knowledge assumptions, that would be where Tears of the Kingdom starts. Right now, Tears of the Kingdom is the highest rated game ever on OpenCritic. I guess we could particularly click on this and see if this is still the truth. Although in all fairness, Metacritic and OpenCritic both are kind of awful sites. They're not being very useful. They've never been that useful. But yeah, you have 100% critics recommend, 97 top critic average, OpenCritic rating. I'd be much more interested in seeing what Famitsu's reviews are on it. But yeah, I really can't be a stick in the mud and saying no, I don't want to play the best game ever. Devolver Direct Showcase has been confirmed for June. I was thinking Digital Devolver, which I guess maybe at some point they dropped the digital and now they're just called Devolver. Or Devolver. No, it's still Devolver Digital. Yeah, it's the other way around. And I just didn't see the lettering there. I thought these Devolver Directs, though, might stop with E3 being cancelled. But they may shift quite a bit too. It may very well be that now Devolver, as a publishing company somewhat, is actually just going to promote and publish games and get away from the ridiculous presentations and narrative storyline that was going on as part of the presentations. The ridiculous narrative storyline. The Epic Games Store's next free title is a mystery game. Yep, I noticed that when I downloaded the Sims content for free. Not going to promote their podcast. CD Projekt has defined a new framework for the Witcher game Project Sirius. The title is in development at a US-based studio called the Molasses Flood. Interesting that it's being developed in the United States, considering how CD Projekt Red is more of a Eastern European country. So we might see a very different type of game called Witcher. Although in all fairness, Witcher 3 was very different from Witcher 1 and 2, and so there hasn't been major consistency between those types of games anyways. The main thing certainly is that if this Witcher Project Sirius comes out relatively soon after Starlight, which I guess it won't, because if they're just at the beginning of development of Project Sirius and Starfield from ZeniMax is out right now, then there won't be any major competition there. But there might be major competition with whatever the next Elder Scrolls game is. And Starfield still has to be as good, if not better, than The Witcher 3. Otherwise, ZeniMax is gonna once again be in trouble as far as just not maintaining their market dominance. The Summer Game Fest announces over 40 partners, including Xbox and PlayStation, Activision, EA, and Disney, also joining a stacked lineup. Second Dinner, noticeably here, Samsung Gaming Hub, Steam. Got quite the collection of game companies, Magic the Gathering, Netflix. Some of these definitely stand out. Disney in general. Amazon Prime Games. It's a wide collection for these Summer Games Fest. Potentially with the Summer Games Fest being a replacement for E3 with perhaps better timing as to why it releases. I did also want to mention there was a ESA, the European Speedrunners Association video that they put out doing one of their speedrun events, and it was, I have to call, the bottom of the barrel as far as them just scraping for ideas, because the speedrun itself, and I also invite people to just check it out and see if your opinion differs from mine, is this female speedrunner who I don't really recognize at all, and she had a cosplay incentive, so she's speedrunning Super Metroid, and so the video starts with her in a Zero Suit Samus cosplay. So people had donated not to see her show off any skills per se, or even show off that she's good at cosplaying, because almost certainly this was a pre-made cosplay by somebody else and not her. And the Zero Suit Samus outfit really is nothing anyways. It is a skin-tight leotard with some shadowing and shading on it. A little bit of painted work, and at best is all you would do for a Zero Suit Samus outfit. And that's in general a great reason why Samus should not be in the Zero Suit for long amounts of time in any Metroid game, is because it's not anywhere as interesting as her armor is and her more traditional look. But so immediately it's like, donate to see the speedrunner in this cosplay when she's sitting down at the chair, and so she's not even really going to be doing poses in the cosplay. But then the Super Metroid speedrun is not just a standard speedrun that they've done a million times over, as far as beat Super Metroid, or beat a randomized version of Super Metroid, or maybe beat a custom-made version of Super Metroid, or particularly having an incentive whether you saved animals or killed animals, which is a meme, certainly. But instead, the incentive was to survive the chat, quote unquote, which means they put in a Twitch mod so that whenever she got donations from the chat, or the chat typed in something, hashtag something, it played these pre-made internet meme type characters on the screen to block her vision. And all the internet meme things were basically things built around her own Twitch chat stuff. So basically, this speedrun has nothing to do with her skill whatsoever in playing the game in a normal, legitimate way, and has everything to do with just letting the people on Twitch spam a bunch of animations and memes all over the screen to block her vision, to try and screw her up. Meanwhile, as a commentator for the 20 minutes or so that I tried to watch this stream, she is just incredibly making horrible commentating. I won't even comment on her gameplay because I'm not trying to personally attack her or anything, but all she's doing is laughing at the memes that are showing up on the screen and not being focused and silent and letting the presenters read donations, which she could have done that, or talking about what she was doing as far as the Super Metroid speedrun that much. She's just kind of giggling and laughing. And inherently, I mean, it really just comes off as the ESA decided to get a gamer girl, and I don't want to call her a Twitch thought or anything like that. I have no idea if that's what she really is all about, but it definitely seems like if there was a guy in cosplay and he was surviving the chat, people would go, what the heck is this? And in the exact same way, I have to say, what the heck was that? That had nothing to do with showing off the skill of somebody's gaming ability or speedrunning ability. It had nothing to, the cosplay incentive had nothing to do with showing off any of her skills that are being celebrated in a speedrunning event. Inherently, it's worth pointing out that there have been people who have been banned from speedrunning events for just wearing a silly hat or doing something silly otherwise, and so now it seems like they've swung in the exact opposite direction. That being said, switching hats or wearing silly hats is more just like showing off your personality versus cosplaying. I've never seen anybody full-on cosplay while trying to speedrun. The two are just completely disconnected, and inherently that is a problem with cosplay in general, is it just has no connection to actual gamers or gaming. It is its own separate thing that's trying to eat away at the attention of gamers and gaming. But yeah, really just bottom of the barrel thing there. I probably should have brought up a video and talked about showing that off. Yeah, let's just do that. Let's show, let's and not tell. Let's see. ESA YouTube. European Space Agency comes up. Okay. Come on. Let's try survive the chat. Okay. Here we go. We're not going to show a full video here for a long time, but we'll give a general view. So here you have the lady in the Zero Suit cosplay at the beginning. You can see she's definitely got her fans in the back, and they've got like meme things in the back. And so she's just wearing this Zero Suit cosplay. You can see her hands are covered too, so it's just like She doesn't even really care about having good control. And then you can, let's skip a bit forward here to just show all the things that are popping up here as she's trying to do a section here. Actually, probably a little bit better if we go back a little bit. Like even at the text places, they're doing just all these internet meme animated GIFs. And see, I just don't see a reason why you would want to, like, here's a great example of them just trying to cover up the screen so that you can't see them. Yeah, it's just absolute ridiculous and an insult to the art of the video game. And looking back here in the corner, it looks like there is about 4 people in the audience that are her friends on the back row, and then maybe about 12 people in the room. And I assume this, I think she did say this probably happened in the middle of the night, so they were just filling in their nighttime stream with nonsense. Although usually in the middle of the night of these events, that's usually when they have people speedrunning super long games like Final Fantasy games. But is this really what speedrunning has come down to? Let's just let the chat meme on us and distract us the whole time. And in all fairness, I didn't even get this far, so maybe she's making good commentary at this point, but first 20 minutes or so, she definitely wasn't making commentary. This whole fog effect, I think, is yet another effect that the chat is triggering. Like here's a great example. She's at a boss fight, and they are just actively blocking the entire screen. Now, it's definitely possible that she is actually lying here. Here you can see she's just giggling and laughing again. And she can see the screen perfectly fine. But it really doesn't even matter if she's lying or not. Alright, that's enough of that though. We don't need to get a content ID claim showing somebody else's video. I've made my point there. The really bottom of the barrel speedrunning stuff. In all fairness though, it is also worth pointing out that there's just not that many new games that have new strategies or concepts around speedrunning. So speedrunning itself has become less and less interesting to me personally in the past couple of years, on top of just controversies around speedrunning for no good reason. Moving on to video game news, because I'm kind of going on tangents here. Activision CEO reportedly thinks that AI could be used as part of a new Guitar Hero. Inherently, everybody is going to think everything can be done with AI. The Google I/O presentation, which was just awful, that happened a few days ago, was 99% AI, where Google's basically saying, here, we're going to have something that says it has AI in it, even if it really isn't anything that would come close to being defined as AI in reality, just so that you as a company or you as a developer can then say your software has AI in it, or your company is using AI, because it is just the next new thing that CEOs of medium and smaller companies are going to say in their shareholders meetings to trick investors into continuing to invest in their companies. How could AI make a Guitar Hero better? I mean, I don't see a major way. Music is pretty specific, and a Guitar Hero in particular is going to have specific songs that you're going to want to be able to specifically emulate and play. I don't see how AI changes that in any way. Maybe the AI animation or the AI Programming arguably might make it easier to make those games, but the games should be fairly easy to animate and make in the first place. If anything, this really just points out that Bobby Kotick, as the CEO of Activision Blizzard, is just throwing out AI as a buzzword once again, like all the other companies. Or perhaps he's threatening to replace people with AI because they're trying to unionize, or because he just wants to cut costs. A report claims that Mortal Kombat 1's DLC could include Peacemaker and Homelander. Who's Peacemaker? Isn't Peacemaker the John Cena character? I think he is. Spin-off of Guardians of the Galaxy. Not Guardians of the Galaxy. Suicide Squad? Yeah. So we've already gone from rumors that a Mortal Kombat 1 remake is being made to now rumors that Mortal Kombat 1 is going to have DLC with Peacemaker and Homelander. It makes some sense, though, like, to have some gimmick characters. That's the way Mortal Kombat games have gone recently. I would much prefer gimmick characters in Peacemaker and Homelander than having wrestler characters' faces be scanned to be the new Sonya Blade or the new Johnny Cage or anything like that. That being said, it may hint at what kind of graphics we should expect. It's probably going to be 2.5D, more cartoony 3D CGI characters, or an attempt at realistic 3D CGI 2.5D style, than a flat 2D cartoony style that you would have seen in the original Mortal Kombat 1, which is going to make it feel different visually. Although, in fairness, Mortal Kombat 1 was more of a rotoscoped, realistic for the time 2D characters. They never really went for super cartoony like Street Fighter. Nintendo has said it has no plans to cut the Switch prices despite slowing sales. I believe that. I bet that there will just be a sharp cutoff in which they stop making Switches altogether, and they never reduce the price as far as the retail price. There may be a saturation of just extra Switches sitting around as soon as they announce their new consoles, though. And it will just be increasingly easy, I imagine, to get a hand-me-down Nintendo Switch for a decent price. Asus's Steam Deck competitor gets a price and a June launch date, so it isn't actually out yet at the ROG Ally. Selling for $700, it is considerably more expensive than even the highest version of the Steam Deck. It doesn't have the touchpads, and honestly, I think it's about 2 times as thick as the Steam Deck, which is kind of surprising. So it doesn't have the touchpads. It doesn't. It maybe has a more traditional layout like an Xbox controller. So there's something to be said there, if that's really what you're looking for. But it is also basically just a Windows computer. See, 8-core processor, 16 gigabytes of LP low-profile DDR5 RAM, and 512 SSD for storage, which isn't probably enough storage, but it's a good start. 8 cores at what speed? 8 cores is probably, honestly, at least 2 cores more than you need for most games, portable playing anyways, but if they are slow cores, that could be a problem. They're not doing anything fancy like 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores or anything like that. Low profile DDR5 tends to be slower, but you really need the speeds for this and this before you could get a general idea. a general idea also of just how long the battery lasts would also be very helpful. So yeah, inherently, whether it was Asus's ROG Ally or a different company that came out first, whatever came out first after the Steam Deck was going to be an also-ran, because it probably would have been developed before the Steam Deck was actually announced, and it is just going to have to really struggle to try to get to that price point per performance that the Steam Deck has. So we still do want to see more companies developing devices like this, particularly since tablets in general are just not really being purchased by most people. So I could see tablets becoming the fourth screen and Steam Deck like devices becoming the third screen, with the first screen still being TV and the second screen being your phone. Arguably, maybe it's the first screen is your phone and your second screen is your TV. Yeah, it probably is that. And with each number, a lot of people aren't going to have any third screen or fourth screen. Let's see, apparently a speedrunner has already beaten Tears of the Kingdom in 94 minutes, which probably doesn't mean much of anything. I'm particularly in an open world game like Tears of the Kingdom. I imagine your fun is going to be found around running around the world and doing all the extra stuff. If you just want to speed run to the boss, then that is going to eliminate a lot of the fun. Although 94 minutes as a amount does indicate to me that with the traditional temples, you actually have to go to all the traditional temples and beat them to fight the final boss. Or in Breath of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, you didn't really have to defeat the 4 divine beasts at all. You could do gimmicks and tricks to get into the final Ganondorf boss battle and beat him. And at a certain level, the game is designed to not force you to do any of the divine beasts at all and just fight Ganondorf if you want to do it that way. I don't want to spend any extra time, but it probably would be useful to look up what the speedrun times are for Breath of the Wild right now, because I imagine it's somewhere around 10-20 minutes at most compared to 94 minutes. Lords of the Fallen could be released in October according to Video Games Chronicle. I guess we'll leave it at that. A Layers of Fear PC demo will be released next week. Okay. Should I make a YouTube short around the game that is releasing a demo? Probably not. Particularly in this case when you have Layers of Fear being a reboot of Layers of Fear. Layer of Fear without the S. Although it is a little bit different because Layers of Fear, the new game, is more of a remake of 2 or 3 of Layer of Fear and its sequel and DLC. Amnesia the Bunker has been delayed to June, which I would have kind of thought that Amnesia the Bunker was already out. And then here we can see Video Games Chronicle really screwing up here and putting the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom review, where it says it's supposed to be Amnesia the Bunker 10 minutes of gameplay. And then apparently a free prequel comic for Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is now available online. It was initially released physically in the US last week. Last week was Free Comic Book Day also, so they definitely lined up for that. Although Free Comic Book Day is not a big deal, because comic books aren't really a big deal. So now I assume it's online on Marvel's website if you want to read it there. Let's see. Hogwarts Legacy for the Nintendo Switch has been delayed to November, which I would have thought Hogwarts Legacy was already on the Switch, but whatever. And then apparently D-Brand is causing controversy again because I think it does get them more attention. So we have a quote, "Go F yourself, lawyers." Quote, D-Brand sells a plagiarized Zelda Switch decals with a hidden message. The outspoken firm says they're addressing one of the world's most litigious companies, which I guess Nintendo probably is one of the world's most litigious companies. Inherently, the thing here, though, I would say, as an armchair understander of copyright laws, I would say Nintendo probably doesn't own this pattern here. You couldn't have a simple pattern like that or a simple pattern. So that's probably not copyrightable. But this symbol here potentially might be copyrightable. And this symbol, as far as the triangles and the arches and things, might be copyrightable if this is something that Nintendo has ever made. Now, if this is totally new art, I think they're in the clear if they own that. And triangles that kind of look like the Triforce but really don't, I think you're in clear. The pattern on the side here, I think you're clear with. And then the outer edge patterns, I think you're clear with. But what kills you in particular would be this symbol and it being repeated here, and this, unless this is Japanese writing and not the made-up language by, let's see if we can get it bigger. If this is the made-up language in Breath of the Wild, I think that's potentially going to kill them. But if this is, say, Sumerian or Celtic or Nordic, it kind of looks like Nordic when I look at it. If this is not the lettering and the fonts that were in Breath of the Wild, then they are in the clear with the lettering. So, as a copyright lawyer, if this is a symbol that's in the game, then they're in trouble. If this is a symbol in the game, if this lettering here is different than this lettering, which I'm having a hard time seeing it, then they'd be in trouble there. Hmm. So yeah, we'll see if this actually leads to a lawsuit, and I guess I just leave it at that. Let's move forward. Let's see, the PlayStation, we're now at the Komatsu articles. PlayStation Plus game catalog and classics lineup for May have been announced. I think we had already talked about that. Mortal Kombat being teased. A game called Alchemic Cutie for the PS5, PS4, and Switch launches June 16th. This game is already mixed on Steam, which makes me very uninterested in it. Love on Leave has a debut trailer. This was one of those romance lewd visual novels from the looks of it. Although it's not actually a visual novel, it's being advertised as a adventure game. And so far it's not in the adult section. But yeah, there's these adventure sections to the actual gameplay where you're walking around and interacting somewhat and fishing as a mini game. Definitely feels like it's going to be a lot of dialogue though, and a lot of romance. and probably a lot of skin showing. Wizardry variants, Daphne Abandon Fear All Who Enter the Abyss trailer is available. This is a smartphone game, but actually the visuals don't look terrible for what they're showing. Wizardry variants, Daphne. I don't know if Daphne is part of the game name. I guess it is. Kind of want to know how this game actually plays. Well, it looks like it's a more visually polished dungeon crawler. Turn-based RPG game, it says. Well, at a certain level, this is where I think you could potentially elevate cell phone games. Looking at this trailer, is that they're putting you in this first-person perspective, which seems on screen space. They are trying to have the camera more zoomed in on the other characters who are talking to you and the people you're fighting with. When I look at this, I don't see your average 2D animations and an average low-effort dungeon crawler. The fact that it's turn-based is a little shocking because the trailer definitely makes it seem like it would be real-time action, but that may just be a case that they've made some decent animations. That being said, they may have the exact same attack animation over and over again. It's coming for smartphones, or it's... What smartphones? iOS and Android in 2023. I kind of want to keep an eye out on that. Of course, the last thing I need to do is find yet another smartphone game to distract me. Marvelous Games Showcase for 2023 is set for late May. Do we have a specific date? Apparently not. Akatsuki Games and Koei Tecmo announced a joint development of a new title. A next-gen game that leverages strengths of both companies. I have never heard of Akatsuki Games, though. Koei Tecmo, a big company, probably acting more like a publisher if I was to guess. Let's see, so if we click on Akatsuki, Behind the Frame, Finest Scenery seems to be the only game that they've made. So let's see this game. It's on my wish list, and once again my network is just absolutely failing to load these images quickly enough. Maybe I had a plugin that was better at this and that plugin stopped working, possibly. Something that would like cache and look ahead. Yeah, so yeah, I imagine you're expecting a flat animation, almost Studio Ghibli-esque type game being made between that collaboration. Okay, we have the Famitsu sales for the 424 to 57 update number 2. Which, why is there a second update? Usually there's only one update at most. But we can see Hogwarts Legacy for the PS4 taking the 2nd spot, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor taking the 7th spot for PS5. Otherwise, everything is Nintendo Switch for the top 10. You can see the PlayStation 5 is still got a long way to catch up with even the Switch OLED model, let alone Switch models in total lifetime sales. Yeah, it seems like they just updated to get to all the way to the top 30. So My Teen Romantic Comedy Snafu for the PS4 taking 12th spot, and then this game I'm not even going to try and pronounce, from ID Factory for the Nintendo Switch taking the 16th spot is new, and then After Image taking the 28th spot is new, and then Hogwarts Legacy being updated as the #1 spot. This was May 1st to the 7th. Yeah. Seems like a lot of updates happening here. The game Gylt, G-Y-L-T, is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC on July 6th. So we'll try and make a YouTube short on this. Part of the problem certainly that's going to be is as I'm working on my router and transitioning, I can't have my macro making YouTube shorts or uploading videos, so I don't particularly have a macro that uploads the videos anyways. I probably should, but that would be somewhat dangerous. And I think I tried to make one and it had a problem with it where it wouldn't work because of how you select files. Yeah, the file selecting pop-up box is not part of Chrome, so I tried it in Chrome. Maybe I could get it to work in Firefox, but I doubt it. The file selecting dialog is really part of Windows, and yeah, the macros can't touch the Windows code. Anyways, that doesn't matter. Drift CE is now available if that interests anybody. PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. We have about 30 more Komatsu articles, so we're not making a lot of progress. A classic action platformer Cyber Citizen Shockman is coming to, it looks like everything except for PC. And this definitely looks like an old game that I'm not particularly interested in. One Piece Odyssey Story DLC Reunion of the Memories launches May 25th. Friends vs. Friends launches May 30th for PC and later in 2023 for consoles. Let's see. I assume this is a player versus player game. It has some cartoony visual style to it. Anthropomorphic animals. I'll make a YouTube short around it, but since it's an online PvP game, I won't put it on the follow list. The game Goodbye Volcano High has been delayed to August 29th, which I believe this game is not a sequel to another game that's somewhat similar. I feel like this game has done a really good job of putting out press releases, although a delay announcement is probably not really what you want, because it definitely has caught my attention, either because it's a decent name or because of its kind of weird art style. Yeah, it is a very different type of art style. I can't inherently say that it's bad though on first glance. Let's see. Decarnation launches May 31st, features music by Akira Yamaoka, Silent Hill composer, on 10 atmospheric tracks. So this is a horror game, I bet. Looks like that's exactly what it is. Kind of an RPG Maker-esque horror game, but it does have a big name behind it, and frankly it feels like it is more focused on being a horror game and not just throwing in generic RPG Maker elements. It's already on my follow list. The first-person soccer adventure game called Despilote, I guess is how you would pronounce that, has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Which that's an interesting concept as far as a soccer ball game, first-person soccer ball experience. The animation looks kind of rough though, I'd have to say. Yeah. And since this doesn't have a release date, I guess I'm not going to make a YouTube short around that. Yeah. Let's see. Trackmania for PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Luna launches May 15th. It is also already available as the Trackmania reboot since February of 2023. That being said, I think there is a problem with its monetization, or maybe its server features. Something there really led people to not be very happy with it. Third-party EULAs, third-party Ubisoft accounts. This is a great game, but there's a bug where I have to launch Ubisoft Connect. Once the bug is rectified, it will change my review. Good game, but requires Ubisoft Connect to work. Trackmania is a pathetic attempt at selling subscription services to very dumb people. Ubisoft has placed local multiplayer land behind €60 3-year subscription, real-time in-game adverts, and data farming from the users. This is one of the worst live service products ever developed. It's like a greasy con artist wearing the skin of your childhood best friend, begging for loose change. Don't become one of the dumb people. Don't buy this con. So, yeah. That's why it's negatively received. As a free-to-play game, even. The live service elements. And I imagine the same live service elements will also be in these versions, and it'll get received just as poorly. Layers of Fear cinematic intro and PC demo launches May 15th. I think you can watch the cinematic intro now if you wanted to. Which, in general, I guess this would just tell us like the level of detail and visuals in at least the intro video. The fact that it's starting with a lighthouse, maybe a BioShock reference more than anything. But yeah, that feels off, that the game wouldn't start at a creepy house like the first game, but whatever. I guess maybe they'll doing something slightly different. If you told me Layers of Fear was actually just a soft sequel to the previous games, that would be fine too, for me. A game called Proto Droid Delta launches May 25th, which I don't know if this is supposed to be like a Mega Man game. It's kind of surprising that there isn't a Mega Man game clone out there. That's not what this is, obviously. This is more of a running and platforming game, precision platformer. I'm not sure I 100% believe it's a good game, but I'll give it a chance. And they're saying now that it's coming out May 25th, even though they haven't updated the date here, so that does, I think, justify making a YouTube short around it. Arc System Works has a 35th anniversary website being opened, which you look at these pictures and here's like River City Girls, and this is another River City spin-off, and you have Guilty Gear, and then several things that I just don't recognize because I don't think Arc System Works has done the best amount of sales in the West. Making a 35th website really doesn't mean much to anybody, though, unless you just are a huge fan of Arc System Works, because it doesn't seem like they're doing a sale or announcing anything or teasing anything. So, like, going to the website here doesn't really mean much. It looks like there might be some like Guilty Gear or Gungrave games. Yeah. All of this is seemingly just paying somebody for a website. At a certain point, an anniversary website might be a great way to test out a new interface though, and just see if they want to change their Arc System Works main website to look more like this. There's by far way more games here that I don't recognize than ones I do. I also saw specifically that there is a newer version improving the layout of the Steam client that's on its way, and they're developing it and beta testing it, and it's going to change the Steam overlay quite a bit, and it's going to maybe get rid of some features, get rid of the ability possibly to theme Steam, which I think some people were still installing themes around Steam. And yeah, I think they're just trying to clean everything up and make it a little bit more modern. It's still not making drastic jumps to being black instead of blue. I think there's still going to be some slightly darker shades of blue here and there on the website, and the in-game browser still seems to be based on an older version of Chromium, which is not particularly safe. And it doesn't seem like they're adding anything new from what I saw. Somebody else looking at it on YouTube. Moving on, we have 4 more Gematsu articles. A Miracle Snack Shop is coming to Xbox Series on May 6th. It's currently available for the PS4, Switch, and PC. So let's see what that game is. It's overwhelmingly positive. It says it has sexual content. I'm not sure if it really does. They just have some suggestive dialogue. Well, you're in a weird situation here. Well, I guess I have to put this on the wish list since it's overwhelmingly positive and has a heck of a lot of reviewers. Almost to the point where if I believed people actually did get away with buying bots to review their games, I would suspect maybe that's the case. Warning, very softcore is one of the positive reviews. Technically, softcore would mean they're showing breasts. Hardcore showing lower genitalia. Or, I imagine in a lot of cases, softcore these days probably also falls under the category of showing boobs and butts, but not buttholes or lower genitalia or anything that would be penetrative or maybe even bondage stuff. Might push something to being more hardcore. There's very few porn developers and producers that are ever really trying to go for softcore in the first place. It's not really in that much of demand. Let's see. Cry Machina has a second trailer. If you want to check that out on Gematsu. Amnesia the Bunker has been delayed to June 6th. And then Hogwarts Legacy for Switch has been delayed to November 14th. Which means we can now just hopefully burn through all the new games that have come out on Steam. This is a... No, we need to do a fall list cleanup first. Again, my macro broke in the middle there. I've got to fix my internet before I try to fix the macro, because it's probably my internet that's causing it. So Exorcist here doesn't have any relevancy, plus it's from February 2020 and still in early access, so that can leave. And then Exangrenate from 2021 I think is not relevant, so we can remove that. Big word certainly to use. Explosiver, I think we could probably remove that too. And then it has only one review from 2022. Explosion. Let's see. satisfying explosions and exciting story. So you're trying to blow up the houses. You know what, I'm going to give this some more time to think about it later. I just want to burn through everything today. So it's Friday. Obviously, Friday. Here's yet another game that kind of looks interesting, certainly, but it's still in early access. So many games in early access that look interesting. Experiment 1 needs more time. Yeah. Expedition 0. Is mixed, so it can leave. Yeah, I don't know why I'm getting duplicate things, but obviously my programming is wrong. Exoprimal still hasn't come out, and it's on the fall list. Exogate Initiative is a dungeon keeper type game, which is mostly positive and just needs more time to come out of early access. Exit the Game Trial of the Griffin needs more time. And then Existence, not to be confused with the Existence movie. Now this is 96% positive with 29 reviews, so technically it doesn't pass the 30 review mark, but it's so close and it's so positive that this one we can put on the wish list, and that's basically the only game we did put on the wish list. So GameDeveloper.com, Activision Blizzard just tried and failed to hold California regulators in contempt. I assume this is probably some legal wrangling that happens more often than you would think. They tried to hold the California Civil Rights Department, CRD, in contempt for allegedly interfering with $18 million harassment settlement with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and that attempt failed miserably. It was quashed by a judge. At a certain point, they don't have the ability to put anybody in contempt. I think this is a misunderstanding, unless I misunderstand it, of how contempt is filed. Contempt is solely something that can be levied against you as a crime by pretty much a judge and a judge only. To be found contempt of court guilty of this crime that only a judge can really even levy against yourself. What I think happened here says the judge denied a motion that would have allowed to the judge to say they were in contempt, so they're asking the judge to hold the person in contempt. And yeah, if you were to give any weight to Activision Blizzard's claims in these proceedings, which I'm not sure there's a real legitimate to give a lot of weight to their claims since they keep losing so terribly, they're definitely arguing that one part of the U.S. government is trying to settle with them and finish this harassment settlement, while another part of the U.S. Government is trying to not allow that settlement to go through and continue to punish or investigate Activision Blizzard. Or in this case, Activision Blizzard has already made an $18 million settlement to make this go away. But this really is stuff that is just on the bottom end and doesn't even really matter as far as the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger. Like these are little annoyances at no level. Even if the full force of every agency in the federal government was working together, is there a system in which Activision Blizzard could be fined enough or sanctioned enough to be really put out of business and hurt? Which just really highlights how rich oligarchs run the United States as much as they run every other capitalist state and government in the world. That they've, over hundreds of years, written the rules to benefit large corporations and rich people, to the point where $18 million settlements are nothing when you're making billions of dollars annually anyways. Which, at some level, that is potentially an argument to get rid of lawyers. If you get rid of lawyers and get rid of a bunch of legal loopholes, and you're just making a generic plain English argument to say, hey, this company is bad, they did this bad thing, and the judge can just say, yes, you did this bad thing, and therefore I'm going to put your company effectively in prison, or execute your company effectively and dismantle it and sell off the pieces. There isn't even really a system that I've ever heard of where a judge could say, you are hereby ordered to go into a full liquidation bankruptcy. Which that would be the equivalent of executing somebody or putting them in prison by ordering them to sell off parts of their company, which would be the equivalent of losing parts of your life, parts of your time, and your freedom. There are ways in which judges can force a company to lose some of their abilities and kind of lose some of their rights, but it's closer to putting a company on probation than it is putting them actually in prison. And yeah, there just really aren't equivalents for the fictional corporation for things like that to happen. Moving on though. GameDeveloper.com says Square Enix Bravely games for the 3DS will go offline in June, which is kind of surprising that they aren't already offline. I wouldn't have thought any of the 3DS games were still working. Online features of Bravely default titles. So, if anything, that probably means that all 3DS online titles will go offline soon after that. Unreal Engine 5.2 offers faster world creation and more creative power. We kind of talked about that. We didn't go into great detail. We really don't need to go into great detail anyways. Inherently, whatever Unreal Engine version 5.2 claims you can create is only going to be as good as the actual developer of the actual games you want to play, because a lot of developers will use Unreal Engine 5.2 and just not use the features or implement the features well in a lot of cases. It's really hard to put in code in a new version of Unreal Engine or any game engine that is just going to default fix or improve the experience for every single game, which the only way you really could fix that is just having better code. You can't just force games to implement a feature that they don't know anything about. In most cases, if you could do something like that, then we could take old NES games like Super Mario Brothers and force in code that was better and better, and Super Mario Bros. Would just look like an Unreal Engine 5 game if that were the case. But that's not really how it works. The CMA puts an interim ban on both on the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger. I don't know why this article is coming out now. We already kind of had known. So, weeks after the CMA blocked the merger of Activision Blizzard, it's gone a step forward in halting the deal. As of May 5th, the regulator temporarily banned the Xbox maker from acquiring an interest in the popular gaming publisher. So, yeah, they're doubling down. Under the ban, neither party can make moves to acquire the other, either as a larger entity or through one of its various subsidiaries without prior written consent from the CMA. Similarly, neither of them can hold an option to acquire an option that they can move on later should the CMA end its order. With this, the CMA puts another dent in Microsoft's almost year-long effort to acquire Activision Blizzard. and inherently, I think Microsoft is probably just going to ignore whatever they're saying there. It's just like we're already hiring the best lawyers we can to fight your first blocking. Now this ban. So absolutely 100% this is not going to scare Microsoft in any way. Microsoft is still going to call Bobby Kotick at Activision Blizzard and coordinate and talk and work towards the merger that way. And I think in a lot of ways, unless the United States also blocks the merger or some other major company blocks the merger, Microsoft may be willing to just fully threaten to pull out or actually pull out of the UK. UK alone, after Brexit, isn't that big of a market that Microsoft would willingly allow itself to be bullied by, because if they allow themselves to be bullied by that country, then every other country is going to try to bully them some more. Moving on, Riot Games global president A. Dylan Jadeja is going to become the CEO later this year. Outgoing CEO Nicolo Laurent will remain at Riot in an advisory role. That probably means very little to most people, including me. It means nothing. Square Enix closes its 2023 fiscal year with financial dips across the board. Which, yeah, Square Enix done effed it up, I guess that's the right word to say, as far as just being a company and making money, even though they had a lot of opportunity to make money and be a better company, and they just don't advertise their games well enough, they don't fund the development of their games well enough, they don't let their games mature well enough, and so you have like Forspoken, and then you have just general Tomb Raider Hitman games not getting enough advertisement to make profit, and then you just have the Final Fantasy games not really selling as well as they want. Inherently, it's almost certainly a case that I say the phrase inherently too much, way too much. It's probably a case that Square Enix has gotten very fat and lazy on massive success of previous Final Fantasy games and did not invest that profit into developing other kinds of games or just making sure even the next Final Fantasy game is as good as the last. Let's see. Open Road's team has rebranded itself to distance itself from Fulbright, which is interesting because Fulbright itself, I believe, was a company that spun off from Dimbold because they didn't like the guy in charge of Dimbold. So there's clearly a collection of people here that just cannot get along. They're taking the game's name for itself as Steve Gaynor is left with the Fulbright title. Let's see if we can get more details. The co-founder Steve Gaynor revealed information in his newsletter, which was confirmed his full departure from Fulbright. His leave comes 2 years after allegations that he fostered a toxic, unhealthy environment at the studio. Unless I'm confused, maybe Fulbright was the original company and then Dimbold was another spin-off company. Let's see. Yeah, this is really digging up old mud, probably. But yeah, they're all saying it's Steve Gaynor. Meanwhile, Open Roads as a game didn't get that much coverage, so it's kind of a shame that there's probably going to be as much coverage about Steve Gaynor and toxic working environments from game developer as there is coverage for the game Open Roads. it'll be interesting to see if Open Road's team once again rebrands itself or tries to split once again. It is important to take a step back and realize that there are definitely some people in the game industry that just call any boss toxic. In fairness, almost every boss is toxic and do make unhealthy environments. The phrase toxic is kind of useless, but anyways, so this might be more of a case that the rest of the team is just a bunch of whiny babies, for lack of a better term, and they may once again split off and find the next person to say is their enemy. Let me see if I can bring up Dueled games. I see a itch.io. I don't see even a Wikipedia. Listing. They're all potentially so irrelevant. Fulbright does have a listing here. So, Dueled was a Santa Fe based company. This Fulbright is Portland, Oregon. So, let's see. Fulbright made Gone Home before forming Fulbright. 3 of the staff worked together in Minerva's Den as an expansion to BioShock 2. During the development, together they worked together and lived together in the same house. After the release, one team member left, found a new studio called Dueled. Fulbright's next game, Tacoma, was released in 2017, and I covered Tacoma and did not think it was anywhere as good as Gone Home. Arguably, I don't think that they have too much otherwise. It's just open roads. So, yeah. It seems to be the narrative, and somewhat believable, that you had 3 friends working together, living in the same house at one point. One of them left and formed Dueled games, which is so irrelevant that it's not even listed on Wikipedia, according to Wikipedia. And now everybody else, so effectively probably the 3rd person of the trio, is becoming Road 96 team, leaving Steve Gaynor alone, of that original 3 at least, with the Fulbright name. And definitely some of this just comes straight down to the fact that that people grow apart, and indie developers often just get very lucky because a game like Gone Home was super covered by people like Giant Bomb and talked about way more than it deserved to be talked about. Here we have the entirety of the Fulbright company, it seems, at the Game Developers Choice Awards in 2014. So you have Katie Craig, Steve Gaynor, Joe Heinemann, Nord Hagen, and Carla Zamanja. I assume this lady in the back was just a presenter and not involved. And Yeah. So if 3 of these, whatever assortment you have of these, was the original 3, then it wasn't a very big company in the first place. Yeah. Okay. Well, pretty much just have to leave it at that. As far as just like Fulbright and Steve Gaynor is on the outs, and maybe it's a little bit of he said, she said type stuff. I can definitely say that these allegations that came out in 2021 would have stuck in my head a little bit more if it was allegations of something particularly atrocious. Like, by Gaynor's own admission, his conduct back then was hurtful to the people that worked at Fulbright, and for that he truly apologized. So he was kind of mean. A mean boss led to the company splitting twice. Which, fine, whatever. Like, the truth is, all of these are indie game developers. They're going to be lucky if they have another success in their entire life. And it is very possible that the world would be better if we all of humanity could make their one great video game and then not feel the pressure or need to make another video game ever. Write their one great novel, make their one great song, whatever people have passion for. Instead of living in this false mentality that somebody like Ed Boon is this game developing genius and he can just make game after game after game, or he can be the boss of a company or the director of projects to make good game after good game after good game. Even the names that we elevate to hero status in the game industry really just lead us to disappointment over and over again, with perhaps the one exception of being Shigeru Miyamoto, which almost certainly Shigeru Miyamoto is stealing a lot of other people's ideas. They almost certainly all are. Moving on. Let's see. Steam has banned gambling with new conduct changes. Bet it all somewhere else that's not Steam. I feel like it was already against the rules to have gambling in the or like spam promoting gambling, which was, we went through all those rules, and that seemed to be the only thing that they really banned. Inherently, man, I gotta stop using that phrase. Like, the idea of gambling Steam skins on a third-party website was always really shady, and it feels like that still will be as allowed by Steam, or as like ignored by Steam as always. So yeah, I didn't see anything here in their code of conduct that says you really couldn't, that they're really going to try and crack down on any of that. They probably will eventually just try and crack down and shut down the Steam marketplace as a concept where all that gambling is really happening, but they're going to do that very slowly, and they're just going to wait until very few people are even doing that. With a potential new version of Counter-Strike Go, if they don't implement Steam Marketplace in the first place for like knife skins in Counter-Strike Go, or if they implement a different type of marketplace where it can't leave the Steam storefront, then they would fix the skin gambling problem in the first place. But they'd lose so much money doing that I don't think they really want to lose that money quite yet, until some government comes in and tells them to stop allowing API access to gambling websites. And nobody can make enough negative press around that for it to stick. Anyways. Okay. This is weird. Why is Far Cry 6 being labeled as a new game? Did this really just come out on Steam? Did De Nouveau third party is mostly positive. All-time peak is today, so apparently the exclusivity around Far Cry 6 on Epic Games Store just ended. And noticeably, this is where Steam, I think, could do a lot better, is that they should, for big AAA games like this, even ones that weren't particularly well received, they should put out an announcement, a press release, at least a front page thing to say, hey, this game is new to Steam, to catch people's attention. Nothing really stops Steam from advertising new games, but if they advertise one, then everybody's going to want to be advertised. So they're trying to stay neutral. I think we can say no to Divine Pearl Survivors. And we're now going through the new games. Here's a Flappy Bird clone called Flappy Souls. Which, you know what? I guess I will say put this on the follow list and make a YouTube short around it. Just for the ridiculousness of it. Borefest looks like it's an intentionally boring game, so I'm going to say no to that. Are we going to see any adult games today on Friday? Probably. At this point, we are seeing adult games almost every day. Hidden Object Game, Hidden Bunny. And this is also opening double duplicate tabs. This is some kind of disc throwing game. It looks too weird. Project Drift. Make a short around that, put it on the follow list. Is this an adult game? Oh, doesn't look like it. Let's double check. 20+ hour of story, 2 branching heroines. Brief depictions of threat and harassment, mild violence, crude humor, cross language, and partial nudity, it says. Okay. So, some moe anime girls in a visual novel. Midsummer Fantasy visual novel of human spirit sorcerers. It won several Japanese industry awards in Japan. Full Audio Japan. Yeah, they probably should list the awards at some point. Let's see. Nope, not listing the awards anywhere. Oh, here they are. Of course, I wouldn't be able to really recognize these awards, but they all seem to be from the same company, awards group. Moving on. Married Woman Cosplay Life is an adult game. And we got the blur on just in time there. Lady with big boobs in a wedding dress. Looks to me like it's just a visual novel of a lady with big boobs. And some other cosplay bunny girl outfits. Let's see what other outfits we see. Just a house dress, a shrine maiden cosplay, a Chinese dress cosplay, bunny girl and maid cosplay. That seems to be about it. 2124 says it has Japanese full audio. I question that. Maybe this is part of the problem why we don't see a lot of really good adult games, is that they want, the Japanese developers of adult games in particular want way too much money for it. 2124 for this is asking way too much. Next we have Toho, Gensoku, Survivors, and I guess anything with the Toho name probably deserves a YouTube short on it. We have VR tractor farming, which, am I highlighting VR games at this point? I guess I am. Agnes and the Gates of Chaos looks like a Game Boy game, which I'm gonna say I'll make a YouTube short on it, but I'm not gonna put it on the follow list because I don't like those types of games, but I do know people do. Proto looks like nothing. Male Pop looks like nothing. Unalive 010 looks like nothing. Blobby Sprint, no. Yeah, we have another adult game called VR Hentai Simulator, which there's something to be said here, and it seems like you're in VR controlling simulations of 3D anime girls being tied up, and you can whip them and put them in different outfits and manipulate them sexually, and it seems like there's just a lot of toys and bondage happening here, so there's a very S&M focus on this game. Let's see. It says it's packed with lots of kinky stuff. Now, in VR, when you look at the video, you can see that the problem with VR is that your head bob is going to cause the camera to just bounce up and down. I'd say the animation in motion doesn't look amazingly great, but it does seem somewhat reactive too, that you can just straight up grab somebody and manipulate them. It seems to be about 1,000,000 times better than 2D versions of these simulators where you're just clicking a button and then it's moving to a specific position and showing you. It's $19.99 and it says it has English full audio, and it says there's a free desktop mode, so I would assume that you don't actually have to play it in VR mode alone. It's definitely an interesting thought. It does say though it requires a VR headset, so I don't know what the desktop mode particularly gives you. Desktop controls gives you WSAD controls. So yeah, that's a interesting thought, certainly. One thing, you can throw like beach balls at the lady, which is not typically a bondage thing I've ever seen, where somebody's just straight up having an anime girl or a girl tied up and then just throwing beach balls at her boobs. That seems a little extreme, or a little out there. It's just abnormal. Yeah, this is definitely one I'd say to experiment with. I guess that means I put it on the follow list too. Next, we have yet another adult game called Sweet Forest Guardian. I guess that answers the question as far as whether we're going to get adult games. And so this one seems like this is timed specifically around Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, because you have these elf girl, 2D elf girl animations being shown. But it really looks like it's just a match 2 game of some sort. They're calling it a card plus real-time tactics game, and there seems like there might be a lane type tower defense gameplay mechanic too. That the animation on that part looks really, really bad though. Obviously it seems like somebody licensed or found on the internet a bunch of elf girls and then crammed them into the game. The big difference here though is that they're only asking for $1.69, so the price is perhaps a lot cheaper, even though the quality might be worse. But I think you are much more reasonable for adult games in particular to ask for something closer to $1.69 than $21. Finally, we have a game we can actually show in Beyond Your Fear. It looks like it's just a horror game. Maybe it's an acid flip game, maybe it's not. I'll give it a chance. We have truck preparation driving VR training, which we're still seeing these occasional educational softwares being put on Steam and then being sold for like $200, which maybe makes sense if you are actually selling professional software via Steam, which I guess that kind of makes some sense. Inherently, selling a fairly expensive professional software on Steam allows you to not have to run your own kind of DRM. So if this developer said, well, either we can make our own software and then we have to run our own DRM, or people are going to crack it because it's too expensive, or we let Steam handle that and hope that Steam can do the DRM for us, because inherently all Steam software has DRM built in. That's just part of what Steam is. No real reason though to put this on the fault list or make a YouTube short around it. Here we have also Road Accident. A lot of these softwares, all coming from the same company, feel like they are perhaps too narrowly focused so that they can charge another $200 from you. And they may very well just not be anywhere as realistic enough to actually be educational. I saw that Make Magazine had a new video on YouTube today talking about medical makers, as far as people making devices that also work in the medical industry. And undoubtedly, if you want to be successful as a nurse, doctor, or something, surgeon, whatever, somebody in the medical industry in general, you are going to have to be much more trained and capable of using critical thinking skills to make new solutions and understand new concepts than previous generation of medical people who have been trained to learn procedures and then regurgitate those procedures but not put any real critical thinking into it. At a certain level, yes, doctors define themselves as being the ones that are supposed to be critically thinking about people and diagnosing people for conditions and diseases. I think I'm going to say no to this game. It's single player? Well, that's weird. That's not at all what I thought this game was going to be. I'll give that a chance then. But even nurses and assistants really need to be thinking about how to improve the medical procedures and the medical industry in general, and not just learning something when they're in college and then repeating that same thing 40 years later when they're about to retire, because that's all they ever learned was to memorize and then repeat. We have what looks like a horse racing game. Always interested in seeing one of these succeed, and this one's off to a good start. It's a farming sim more than just a horse riding or horse racing thing, or perhaps more accurately, it's a ranching sim. I'm not seeing actually any screenshots of actually farming things, and seems to be only horses, so no other kinds of animals. Here we have a programming game called Logic Cats, which probably is too simplistic, but I'll give it a chance. And then Star Raver. Is this a VR game? Yes, it is. Does it look like anything interesting here? Nope. Here we have a game called Bum Simulator, which obviously is a joke game, but perhaps is polished well enough to be considered. You can see it's rated very positively here, and I know at the beginning of this video, and I don't know why videos have started playing here, you have this drunken bum There's almost certainly something cultural here. He's just peeing on a police officer and flipping him off. There is almost something certainly bad about demonizing bums and making them as ridiculous and non-human and as deplorable as you can possibly make them look, when really people who are homeless and jobless often are the people in most need of compassion and caring, and often get the least of it. So yeah, but whatever, it's a video game. Video games are not moral arbitrators by any means, and they don't have to just do what is the morally right thing to do at all times. Otherwise, video games would be incredibly boring. I think we can say no to ISO Racer, and here we have an adult game, but I'm not sure that this is adult content or nudity. I guess it is. It says contains demonstration of beating and forced undressing of anime women, which seems like odd descriptions. This is the asset flipped anime waifu characters we see in a bunch of low effort games, 3D models, and you're playing as this little dark haired girl, which seems a lot shorter and potentially maybe younger than all the other anime waifu characters that are in bikinis wandering around, and you're swinging a sword and hitting all these anime waifus, and their heads seem to just start growing until the point that they explode. So maybe that's the angry part of it. And so you're just like, it's almost like a zombie game where you're just getting overwhelmed by zombies, and you're trying to make like an Oni Chambara type of experience, or they're trying to make something like Oni Chambara where you would swing swords and fight zombies, except for in this case the zombies aren't zombies, they're anime waifus. This game is $2.39. It says it has full Japanese audio. I question that. Also saying it's the craziest game you've ever played, which I question that too. It really just feels super low effort. And when you attack, looking at the video, it doesn't seem like that inherently puts the characters in a state of being nude. So it feels like there's very little nudity in the game. There's like one screenshot with nudity, but I don't know what you do to get to that point. When you attack, they just fall to the ground and then eventually disappear, like a standard video game enemy often would. Next we have Miko's Pledge 3, which looks like it's a side-scrolling shooter game. I'll give that a chance without investigating further whether there's a Pledge 1 or 2. Here we have Absurdika. This guy or girl, I can't even really tell, with a chainsaw in a platforming horror game. That looks different, so I'll give it a chance. Here we have Quest for the Golden Candelabra, which looks like nothing of interest. Then Redeem marked A Convenient Apocalypse. Looks like nothing of interest. Bunch of asset flip nonsense. Primal Survivors. I mean, I guess at a certain point, anything with survivors in it should just get a YouTube short. Although I'm gonna, at this point, probably stop putting things with survivors in the name on the follow list, because I'm not gonna play that many survivors game. Same is true for Big Fish games. It's been a while, a little bit of time since we saw Big Fish games hidden object game. Then we have a Project Horror Anthology Project Prequel, which I don't know if that is an actual game or just a prequel that they're selling for $13 $99. Let's see, Blindside War of Wardens is a beat 'em up game. It's interesting looking. Ultimate Ragdoll game, I think we can say no to. Siberian Village is probably just an asset flip walking simulator. Visually, it looks good, like most walking simulators, but I don't think there's a real game here. Version 0.1 of the game is almost certainly not a version that should be allowed on Steam. And yeah, I guess at a certain point, I think we can say no to Disaster Island also. If Valve said, hey, we only allow version 1.0 or later versions of games. Give us an example of a game that is earlier than version 1.0. We need, as an example, we would like a build submitted privately to us so that we can see any level of previous development or improvement. Here we have Solitary Paper Plane, which was still getting far too many of these endless flyer games. Because yeah, if somebody could launch a previous running version of any game and then say, okay, we see that you've made progress here and you're not just putting out your very first successful compiled version of your executable, that would be kind of great. But I bet Valve would never really do that, because then they'd have to pay more people to actually look at the submissions, which I don't think they're paying anybody to really look at submissions at all. Survival Extreme. Yeah, at a certain level though, if the listing a game on Steam experience was more of a longer process of Steam seeing your different versions improving in the development process in which your game has been made, then you could establish more trust there. Certainly, if Valve and Steam has been watching you develop a game for years, then they know you're probably not a fly-by-night company. Alright, well, on that thought that will probably never be implemented, and nothing like it will probably ever be implemented, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.